Welcome back to the Bro Show Super Bowl edition. We have made it. Enjoy it. It's the last football game for many, many, many months. But it's a very intriguing matchup. We've got Kansas City once again. Who could have thought that Patrick Mahomes would make it back to the Super Bowl, taking on the Eagles and Jalen Hurts? A rematch from a couple Super Bowls ago. You know, we were both on the Bills in our last video to win. It ends up being the Chiefs. Are you excited for this matchup as a fan?
Me? No. I mean, it's the Super Bowl, so I'm going to watch, but I wish there was a way both of them could lose. You know, obviously, we've talked about it. I'm a Cowboys fan, so, watching Eagles fans, even some of my friends who we've had a fun, light competition throughout the years, being Eagles fans, Cowboy fan. Yeah, and then I think a lot of people are sick of the Chiefs. They're kind of sick of this, what seems to be a little favoritism, whether it's true or not, I don't know. It seems to pop up in really, really big moments in these big games, but no, I'm not excited. No, I hate the Eagles, and the Chiefs are kind of annoying, but it's the Super Bowl, so I'm excited to watch the Super Bowl. So.
Yeah, I think that's kind of where most people's heads are at. Like, it would have been really exciting to see the Bills and Josh Allen, finally get over the hump. And they played very well against KC. They just, couldn't get it done at the very, very end. Although I do believe he did get that first down. I'm just saying. I do believe he did get that first down. And then, we talked about the Eagles and the Commanders, and I was on the Eagles. I thought that the running game was going to be too much for Washington's horrific run defense, and talk about a under prediction. Saquon Barkley absolutely massacring Washington from the early start. His first two carries both went for touchdowns. Washington crawled back a little bit towards the end of the first half, but then the Eagles blew it open in the second half and dropping 55 points in the NFC Championship game. A very, very impressive total there. What are your thoughts on the NFC Championship game?
I was disappointed in the outcome. I think the most exciting Super Bowl, as far as new blood, would have been Bills Commanders. Both of those have great stories. Josh Allen probably is going to win the MVP. I don't know. Maybe Lamar Jackson, deserves it as well. We've talked about that. But then you've got the story of your rookie quarterback Jaden Daniels and Dan Quinn, first year with the Commanders, taking the team from last place to first place to the Super Bowl with a rookie. Lots of free agency trades moves. I think that would have been the most new blood fun Super Bowl. But the Eagles are the best team in the NFC. The Chiefs are the best team in the AFC. And we've got what we've got. But I was really hoping to see the Commanders pull that out, just for like a first time type deal. First rookie in the Super Bowl kind of thing.
Well, we are stuck with KC and the Eagles, so let's dive into it. Let's talk about this game. Again, Kansas City did take on the Eagles a couple years ago in the Super Bowl. It was a high-scoring affair. I believe the final score was 38-35, Kansas City. Mm-hmm. Kansas City's only -1 in this game. Now, this line, I believe, opened up at 2, so it has been bet in favor of Philly. The line also for the over-under opened at 49 or even 49.5 and is now down to 48.5 as of the recording of this video. So it seems that the general public is on Philly and is on the under. What do you think about that? Is that, first of all, meeting your expectations, or would you have expected, generally speaking, people to be betting on Mahomes and Kansas City?
So I'd be interested to see where the public numbers that you see are coming from. So I've been using Vision, and
I'm just talking about line movement. The fact that the line has moved in favor of Philly and in favor of the under.
Well, yeah. So that's interesting. So it started at 49.5. Now it's 48.5, and it shows on DraftKings about 80% of the money is on the over. So that's kind of interesting. I already liked the under for numerous reasons. And now I love it. So that's probably the under is probably going to be, just spoiler alert, probably be my favorite, I guess, bet of the two bets that I'm going to make outside of a few props. So I think one, it's the Super Bowl, and both of these teams, I really feel like it's a coin flip. I can't really convince myself either way of which one I think is going to win this game. I think if Philly wins, they're going to blow them out. I think that's the only way Philly wins. And I think if the Chiefs win, I think it's going to be pretty close. Those are the two kind of scenarios I see happening. Why? We can get into that. But I think that's where I stand right now as my prediction.
I mean, I think it's not a bad call to say if the Eagles win, it could be in a blowout because that's what we've seen so far them do in the playoffs. It's one of those things that if Kansas City's run defense is lacking or if there's a significant advantage for Philly in the run game, then they're just going to blow them out of the water because if you can't stop Saquon, you can't stop the run, you have no chance of stopping Philly, period. That's before they add in the runs with Jalen Hurts, before they even talk about passing the ball. And if you just can't stop the basic runs, like so far, the Packers weren't able to do so. Washington wasn't able to do so. It could definitely be ugly early. But the thing is, I don't think that's an impossibility because when I look at the rosters of both these teams, Philly is better at running back. Philly is better at receiver. Philly is better at offensive line. Philly is better at defensive line. Philly is better at linebacker. Philly is better at defensive back. They're better at every single position group with the exception of quarterback. Of course, we know that Mahomes over Hurts is an advantage. And then if you want to talk about tight end, it depends on your feelings. I still believe that Travis Kelce has the edge, but if you think that he's old and washed and that Philly does have some good tight ends, which they do, I'm not going to necessarily argue it against it. But does the quarterback advantage mean more than the entire overall team advantage unless you factor in the coaching?
Yeah. So that's the first breakdown that I did to try and narrow down where I've got. So let's just start at the top. Head coach Andy Reid over Nick Sirianni. I don't think many people are going to argue that Nick Sirianni has the edge over Andy Reid. He's 3-time Super Bowl champ, one of the best offensive coordinators in the league. And so I did some reading on that. I know you're not a fan of Matt Nagy, and I get it.
That is an understatement. That is an understatement. Listen, it's not that I'm not a fan of him. I think he's the worst coach in the history of organized athletics. That's nothing to do with my personal feelings about it.
Well, to that point, here's the thing. I read a couple different articles. It's just trying to figure out who actually calls the plays for Kansas City. And the answer is Andy Reid. Andy Reid calls the plays for
Cincinnati. You didn't need to read any articles. You could ask me.
Yeah, Nagy, but the reason I say that is in previous conversations with us, you've really kind of poo-pooed on Kansas City's offense because Nagy's the offensive coordinator. Andy Reid is calling the plays. He's communicating to Nagy, and Nagy's calling it into Mahomes. That's the hierarchy. That's how it works in Kansas City.
Nagy is a glorified water boy, yes.
Yeah, exactly. He's I guess a Schottenheimer, right? But so I think that's a big piece of this. Again, Andy Reid has 3 Super Bowl rings. He's one of the better coaches. He's Hall of Fame coach. And Sirianni, he's young, hungry, and bold, I guess. That's all I can really say about him. He's been to the Super Bowl now twice since he's been a head coach, but he's been able to kind of surround himself now, obviously with a better defensive coordinator with Vic. You can argue Kellen Moore is definitely better than last year, but I'm going to give the head coaching lean to Andy Reid there. Offensive coordinator again, Andy Reid over Kellen Moore, obvious, right? I don't think anybody would argue with the opposite. But then you kind of start getting into the more interesting take here. Steve Spagnuolo and Vic Fangio, two the best defensive coordinators in the league this year. I heard a stat that Andy Reid is 8-0 against a Fangio defense. But the problem is this is probably the best defense the Fangio's had, right? Jordan Davis, Jalen Carter, one of the best, if not the best, interior defensive linemen in the NFL as a duo. CJ Garner Johnson, Blankenship, Slay Jr., Cooper DeJean, also one of the best secondaries in the NFL. So they're really stout, like you mentioned, even at the linebacker position.
Quinyon Mitchell, he's a stud too.
Absolutely, yeah. I'm just trying to keep the cream up there. Right. So the Eagles' defense is definitely one of the best defenses in the league. But on the opposite side of that, or I guess let me make one more point on that, and I'll let you go on their defense. One thing that's really important to understand, I guess, on this season is Philadelphia's offense had the highest average time of possession this year of all the teams, number 1. So what does that mean? That means their defense gets to rest. That means that they keep their defense off the field, which means that they're fresh, which means that they're going to, generally are, fresher legs and they play better, right? That's kind of the idea. So I think that's a really big point for Philly when we're kind of breaking down the defenses. And I can get into Spags, but I'll kind of let you respond to that defense and Fangio.
Yeah, I actually think Nick Sirianni is kind of underrated as a head coach. I know a lot of people like to crap on him, especially Philly fans. And when you look at it from an outside perspective, he's been very successful pretty much everywhere he's been. And now back to back, well, not, 2 out of 3 years, he's made it to the Super Bowl. But when it comes to defensive coordinator, I agree that it's a very tough call. These are probably the two top defensive coordinators in all of football, as you talked about. Fangio has, was not successful as a head coach, but he has been basically the best defensive coordinator and kind of a pioneer in terms of his play calling that the rest of the league ends up covering and copying his schemes. A lot of that has presented itself recently in the two high safety look. He will run two high safeties on virtually every single play. So Kansas City, when you have a great offensive mind in Andy Reid, when you have 2 weeks to prepare, you should be able to come up with strategies and schemes to be able to exploit that and say like, hey, we got to force them to put more guys in the box. That way we could throw it deep over them. That may have to be with running the football, as we'll talk about with props in a little bit. I do have an angle on that I love for a Kansas City rush yard prop. But I do expect Kansas City to have the ability to come up with the schemes to at least target the defense. For the Spagnuolo side, we know he loves to blitz. We know he loves to send the innovative blitz packages, which when you're going against a heavy run scheme may or may not be the best thing, right? If you're running to the opposite side of the blitz or you manage to get through the blitz, that's the best way to beat the blitz, just to run straight past it. And then you have no second and third level guys to stop Saquon. It's not even a fault of Kansas City. There's no one who could stop Saquon when he gets to the third level. As we've seen already multiple times this playoffs, he's had 4 60-yard touchdown runs or something like that.
Right.
So I think if either coordinator is probably going to have to change their scheme, I expect it to be more so Kansas City than the Eagles. I think the Eagles are just going to be like, listen, this has been working for us. And if we can avoid taking unnecessary risks and allowing the deep shots, which is what our defense is already structured to do, because we can get such great pressure with our stud defensive line, we're going to keep doing that. So I'd probably give the slight defensive edge to the Eagles and the slight offensive edge to Philly, which again means, we have the top two going against each other. I think it's a fascinating matchup. I think there's a reason why the line is only 1 point, because it really is a coin flip and I could see either team winning.
Yeah. So obviously we know Spags likes to blitz. It's for whatever reason in the NFL, these coaches haven't been able to figure out that in big plays, in big situations, he's bringing everybody, right? Like he did against the Bills last week or 2 weeks ago to end the game effectively. And so in 2024, his defense was number 6 in pressure rate in quarters 2 through 4. 2 through 4, I guess that means in the first quarter, they weren't great. I don't know. But for whatever reason, this is where the statistics that I pulled were.
He wanted to lull them into a false sense of security. Make them think they weren't blitzing and then ramp it up at a later part of the game.
They wanted to make it interesting, right? So they wanted a lot of one-score games. But what's interesting is when you look at Jalen Hurts under pressure, this season, out of 37 starting quarterbacks, he was 37th in success rate when pressured, 37th in EPA when pressured, 33 out of 37 in sack rate, and 32 out of 37 in yards per attempt, which is not great. But they're the number 1 team in the NFC. Why is that? Because they have the number 1 offensive line and they have the number 1 running back. So again, back to your point on Saquon, if they decide that they're going to continue this type of pressure, they're really going to they're going to expose themselves to Saquon and having a big game. But I do trust in Spags. I do think that they're going to have a solid game plan. And you also mentioned that you think that the Eagles have a better wide receiving core. I don't know that I necessarily agree with that. When you look at their personnel, who do the Chiefs have? They've got a ton of veterans. Obviously they've got Travis Kelce, Mr. NFL, Mr. Taylor Swift, Mr. Postseason GOAT himself. Hollywood Brown, veteran. DeAndre Hopkins, veteran. Kareem Hunt, veteran. Samaje Perine, Juju Smith-Schuster. All these guys are veterans in the NFL who don't have a ring. And I think they're going to be very hungry. I think you're going to get some really big plays out of these guys. And AJ Brown and DeAndre Smith or Devontae Smith. I mean, Devontae's good, but he's not better than DeAndre Hopkins. In
2025, I have to strongly disagree with that statement. I think in
2025, sure, but I mean
that's when the game is being played. I mean. Sure, DeAndre Hopkins at the peak of his career was better, but right now, if you put Devontae Smith on Philly or on Kansas City, he's their number one receiver. He's going to have 100 receptions on the year. He's going to have 1,500 yards and 15 touchdowns because Mahomes is just going to feed him the ball because he's clearly head and shoulders above every other receiver they have. I have to push back on that one right there.
And 2 big drops when it mattered most. DeAndre Hopkins doesn't drop the ball. He's one of the best at not dropping the ball. What I'm saying is, I've never been a huge Devontae Smith guy. I mean, when he was in college, he was one of the most dominant wide receivers in college history, right? Broke records and stuff. But now he's in the NFL. He's a $180, Charmony soft, and he's in big plays, in big moments, he's dropped the ball. So I just think that in this big game, I don't know that I would necessarily give the personnel overall the edge on offense to Philly. I mean, and also considering who's throwing the ball. Jalen Hurts isn't. He's been really good for Philly, but Patrick Mahomes is head and shoulders above Jalen Hurts. So that's what I would say there. But yeah, I mean, yeah, in 2025, yeah, sure, age and all that stuff. But this is a big game.
Well, let's get into our picks. It is a big game, but even with all that, even though I do think the Eagles are better at virtually every position, Kansas City still has the better quarterback, and they have the better head coach, and I think that counts for a lot. I was thinking about it, and I believe this is the 5th Super Bowl for Patrick Mahomes. He's made, 7 AFC championships, lost 1 to Brady, lost 1 to Burrow, so this is now his 5th. I was on San Francisco with Jimmy Garoppolo. I was on Tampa Bay with Tom Brady. I was on the Eagles with Jalen Hurts. I was on San Francisco with Brock Purdy. I somehow have faded Mahomes all 4 years in the Super Bowl. My initial instinct when this game was first announced was Philly. Right? Because I looked at their roster and I said, listen, yes, they are worse at quarterback, but they are just stacked everywhere else, especially on defense. But the more I've thought about this game, the more I think that Kansas City is going to be fighting very hard for this three-peat. I think the league would rather have Kansas City win if you believe in any of those type of theories. And with the under being, with the total going towards the under, we'll talk about that in a second. I also like the under. And again, if that means that Philly is going to be scoring less, I think that does definitely benefit Kansas City. They have had much more experience this year winning close games. I believe they've had 11 or something one-score games, an insane, crazy number like that. Yeah. They've only scored over 30 points once this year. It was last game against Buffalo. So either you want to say their offense is trending hot at the right time, sure, or they're more equipped to play in lower scoring games. If the game comes down to it, Jalen Hurts driving for a possession for the lead, I would rather have Kansas City on defense. If it's Patrick Mahomes driving for possession for the lead, I'd rather have Kansas City on offense. I'm taking the Chiefs in this game.
Well, spoiler alert, I'm with you, and it's not necessarily the X's and O's that has me here. I mean, that's a big part of it, and that's the coin flip part of this discussion. You could argue who has the better defensive line. You could argue who has the better personnel catching passes. You're not going to argue who the better running backfield or the backfield is or the quarterback. But how do you bet against Patrick Mahomes in the Super Bowl? His only loss in the Super Bowl is to the greatest of all time. Yeah, the only time he lost was
1-3.
Yeah. And I did too. I was with Purdy last year. I don't know. I don't think I bet the previous matchup. I was just upset. But yeah, I'm not going to bet against Patrick Mahomes. I'm not going to bet against Andy Reid. I'm not going to bet against Travis Kelce in what is likely his last NFL game. I'm not going to bet against the first ever three-peat in NFL history. Especially after, did you see Goodell last in the AFC Championship basically make out with Mahomes on the sideline, like giving him big hugs and stuff as confetti, red confetti's falling from the sky? I mean, no, I'm not wearing my tinfoil hat, but I just feel like that's what they want. That's what the NFL wants. Philly's still kind of the bad boy, they threw snowballs at Santa. It was a long time ago, but still, they've never shook that reputation. And then, the guy that got banned from all the games, calling that lady the C word. They just got some bad juju behind them. And I think that the Chiefs have kind of the tailwind kind of pushing them through here. So, yeah, I'm going to go Chiefs. I'm not happy about it. I certainly wouldn't be happy about it with the Eagles. And so yeah, my pick is the Chiefs. I'm with you. Let's go. Probably, I want to see how pricey the money line is. Since it's just one, it's no difference. So probably just take the -1.
Well, if you want the best money line anywhere on the market, go to brothrow.com/YouTube. As of the recording of this video, Kansas City is -110 on the money line if you were to back Chad and I and ride with us on Kansas City. You can sign up for absolutely free. Get the best price on the market for the over-under, for the spread, for the money line, not just for the Super Bowl, but for every game and every league that you're interested in gambling. So sign up for free today, brothrow.com, promo code YouTube. Chad, you mentioned earlier that you like the under. I also like the under. So let's give a quick sell job. I want to go ahead and take it. Why are you in favor of the under here at 48.5?
I don't have any X's and O's again on this pick. I've just watched where it opened, and I've watched where the money is to see movements, and it doesn't make sense if all the money's on the over that it's dropped to 48.5. So that's it. That's all I need. I'm going to bet the under.
Last week, or in the conference championship games, both games soared over. Philly hit the over by themselves with 55 points. Kansas City, their highest scoring output game of the season as well. Now, after that, we're going with under 48.5. And again, as the line you said, it's a low under to begin with. The Super Bowl, when these two teams played a couple years ago, 38-35. Yes, the teams have some slight differences, but isn't the real significant difference that there's Saquon Barkley, now a better running back and a better offensive scheme now for Philly coming in? I mean, they still had the majority of the stars on both teams. Kelsey's a little older, sure. The Kansas City receiving core is mixed up, but it doesn't necessarily seem like this should be a line that's 15 points lower than their previous Super Bowl appearances. So I agree. I think every factor here points to the under. We know that both defenses are super strong. Generally speaking, playoffs, the defense takes a better step each and every single game. So I expect their defense to be playing at the maximum level because it's a Super Bowl. You got to leave it all on the field. I think that we definitely both are in agreement on the under 48.5 and with the sketchy line movement for sure. There's also some prop action. We want to talk a little bit of prop action here. I did allude to it earlier in the video, and my favorite prop for the Super Bowl, Patrick Mahomes rush yards. Yes, Patrick Mahomes rush yards. We know that he loves to run in the playoffs and in the Super Bowl. He had almost 50 yards rushing last week against Buffalo. And in his career in the Super Bowl, he's had 66, 44, 19, 33, and 29 yards in each of his 5 appearances. The number that you can get right now is right around 30. So he would have hit that number in 4 out of 5 Super Bowls. The Eagles do have a great defensive line. So if we're expecting there to be some pressure on Mahomes, they're not going to call too many called runs. Maybe we get 1 or 2, but there's not going to be a ton. So we mostly need it to happen on the scrambles. We know that he loves to scramble, especially on 3rd down, especially when the pass rush comes in. So if we think that the Eagles are going to have an advantage in that defensive line, offensive line matchup, which I do, then that should lead to Mahomes needing to bail out of the pocket and pick up some extra yards. You can also take a look at rush attempts for this one too, because if he does get bailed out a few extra times, the QB kneel downs, if the Chiefs do win at the end of the game, do count for that. But I think that we're going to see a heavy dose of Mahomes on the ground. Also considering that the strength of the Eagles' run defense is right up the middle. So if their game plan is to run, and they're going to say like, hey, we're going to put Pacheco up the middle, Hunt up the middle, I don't know that's going to be the biggest success. I think they're going to have more success if they try to go to the outside. And I actually see Mahomes getting a couple decent carries in this game. So Mahomes rush yards is probably my top player prop for the Super Bowl.
So more of your traditional props. I told you earlier, I kind of like A.J. Brown, score touchdown, anytime touchdown. I don't know what it is currently, but it was I think plus 145. I can't remember what it was, but I like that prop. I do think that if they go in the air and they are able to kind of eliminate, like you mentioned, some of the blitz packages to limit their Saquon action, let's say, that I do like A.J. Brown in anytime touchdown. And then more of my kind of 2nd, 3rd, 4th level kind of brainwaves prop. I like Chris Jones to win the MVP.
Really?
Ask me why.
Why?
Ask me why. So going back to, and this is a long shot, but the payout's high. I think I got it actually a couple weeks ago at plus 15,000. I don't know what it is now, but he's probably on down the list. Obviously, how often has a defensive lineman won the MVP? But if I think about the reasons for my picks today, number one, I think it's going to be an under. I think it's going to be a low scoring game, heavy defensive game. I think about the pressure rate that Kansas City puts on quarterbacks. And I think about the sack rate from those pressured defenses for Jalen Hurts. I think I said he was, 33rd out of 37 in sack rate. So he gets sacked a lot when pressured a lot. Who's going to be the lead guy in those sacks likely for the Chiefs? Probably Chris Jones. If they run the ball a lot in between the tackles, Chris Jones is going to be involved. I think he's going to have a lot of half sacks or sacks as well as tackles. So I think it's a fun little long shot. And then I think I put $10 on it at plus 15,000. So could be a nice little payout for me. But that, outside of your Mahomes MVP, Saquon Barkley MVP, that kind of thing, that's not very fun, So I think that's going to be fun.
Also, to add on to that, not that you need even more selling, but in the NFC Championship game, starting center Cam Jurgens did not start. They had to go with the backup, who then got hurt, and they had to go back to Jurgens. So if the center position has any sort of weakness for Kansas City, for the Eagles, then Jones could feast on the best matchup on the offensive line. Also, if it is a super low-scoring game and Saquon gets absolutely stuffed, that will all be attributed to Jones. So I actually don't hate that look at all. I think I might go ahead and sprinkle that with you, because let's say it's like somehow like a 13-10 type game. They could easily go with the defender. Easily.
Yeah.
The last prop that I got for you, my favorite prop to bet, it hits seemingly every single year. 3 consecutive unanswered scores. Yes. Minus 160 this year, which is about the lowest that I've seen it in recent memory for the Super Bowl. But I believe I looked up some statistics, and I think this has hit in over 60% of playoff games since 2004. This happens very, very often. Extra points do not count, so you need to have either 3 touchdowns / field goals in a row. But again, this feels like the classic suckers bet for people who are not very tuned in to football and for gambling. And it's like, hey, I'm going to bet on the Super Bowl. 3 straight unanswered scores, no, for plus 160, 170, whatever the number is. That feels pretty good. It's going to be a back and forth game. And, if you were to say, hey, any 3 scores in a row is pretty unlikely, but if there's going to be, 10 to 12 scores over the course of the game, the likelihood that one of them has a 3 in a row streak then all becomes way more likely. So this is kind of a bet that is a little bit counterintuitive, but when you look more into it, it hits at a really, really high rate. And especially in a game like this, where I think that we could easily see, as we said, the Eagles getting off to a blowout type performance. If their offensive line and run game is destroying, it could be very feasible they're getting 3 scores in a row. And both defenses are so good, in my opinion, that I could definitely see one team getting a bunch of stops to give their offense the ability to get 3 straight scores. I'll be taking this one at minus 160 again. This is about the best price that I've seen it in a while. That's if you stayed to the end of the video, that's my little nugget for you. Yes, 3 straight scores.
Okay. I like that. I hadn't even thought about that. I don't even know if I saw that prop. My last prop is more traditional, more fun for everybody to play, and it's one of those that you get instant gratification on. And it's the coin flip. I had a premonition, Jake, and I saw a vision, and the coin's going to land on heads.
I like it.
So
I like it.
Let's get rich.
Let's get rich.
I can't bet it on BroThrow, obviously, but I think it's going to be heads. So
heads, the coin toss, color of the Gatorade that's dumped on the head coach. Another great bet. A lot of times you can find some insider info because people are looking out for that, and like there'll be people on the sideline that's like, hey, Kansas City's got all yellow Gatorade for this game. And you can just bet on yellow. The Super Bowl song stuff. There's always a lot. The halftime show song. There's always a lot of great stuff to bet on. I remember my greatest prop bet of all time, minus 500. Katy Perry to show cleavage during the halftime show. Yes, the biggest nuke of all time, without a doubt. Free. Cannot believe it was even offered on my sportsbook at the time. But shout out Katy Perry. That was my easiest bet of all time for prop bets.
Oh wow! I wish they'd have had that when what was that 2003-ish when Justin Timberlake and Janet Jackson plus 2,000 for to see Janet Jackson's whole boob. I wonder if that was a prop.
That would have been a high payout. Definitely better than minus 500.
I was at a church event. I was with a bunch of church kids when that happened. All the parents went crazy. It's hilarious. Anywho.
Okay. Anyways, we appreciate you guys who are still tuned in at this late in the video. Absolute legends. Go ahead and leave your prediction in the comments on the final score. Tell you what, if you made it this late, we'll do a little giveaway. We'll do a little giveaway in the comments. Whoever's closest to the final score, get a little something from us on BroThrow, maybe a hat, maybe a little bit of merch. So appreciate all of you guys for tuning in, not just for this video, but the entire season long. There may be some videos to come in the future. Stay tuned after football season. Definitely stay tuned for that. But as always, brothrow.com/YouTube if you want to sign up for free. Chat, anything you want to leave the viewers with before we end off our Super Bowl preview?
No, just thanks for sticking with us this year. Those who watched, those who contributed. It's been fun. Been a lot of time for me and Jake, but it's been fun kind of getting into the details of these games, and having a losing record overall, I think, has been fun too.
Well, if you bet all the picks on BroThrow, you've saved way more money than betting it anywhere else.
That's
so
right.
thank you to
We'll
all
have
of
a
you guys.
positive record next year.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And we'll have a positive record on this Super Bowl. We're both in agreement. Chiefs and the under. What could go wrong? See everybody in the next one. Peace.